Have you ever paused in your day, maybe looked at the intricate patterns of nature, the seemingly perfect laws governing our universe, and just for a moment wondered, what if it's all code?
Hmm.
What if this incredibly rich, detailed reality we inhabit isn't quite as, well, physical as it appears?
Right.
Today, we're plunging into one of the most mind-bending questions ever posed, the simulation hypothesis.
It really is mind-bending.
And this isn't just, a fun concept for a blockbuster movie anymore. It's a profound debate, and it's actively engaging philosophers, cutting-edge physicists, technologists all around the globe.
Absolutely. It's gone mainstream in a big way.
So our deep dive today is really a journey, starting from the very dawn of philosophical thought right up to the frontiers of artificial intelligence. We're exploring an idea that could, well, fundamentally redefine everything we think we know about existence.
And our mission for this exploration is pretty clear. We're going to try and unpack the core arguments, both for and against the idea that our reality is essentially a computational construct. We'll trace its historical lineage, look at the modern scientific evidence, the theoretical frameworks, delve into some proposed empirical tests. How could we actually check this?
Yeah, the glitch in the matrix stuff.
Kind of, yeah. We'll also consider AI's unique and frankly pivotal role in all of this. And finally, grapple with the truly profound cultural and ethical implications. What if it is true?
Right. What does it all mean?
Exactly. But our goal isn't really to convince you one way or the other. It's more about equipping you with the knowledge, the different perspectives, the intellectual framework to understand this really complex, thought-provoking idea.
So people can make up their own minds.
Precisely. We've distilled key insights from a whole stack of sources, trying to offer you a comprehensive look at a concept that genuinely pushes the boundaries of human inquiry.
Okay, let's peel back the layers here then. The idea that our reality might be an illusion, it isn't some brand new modern anxiety, is it?
Not at all. No, it's a preoccupation that spans millennia, long before microchips or, fiber optics.
So if we go all the way back to ancient Greece, maybe around, 380 BCE, Plato gave us the incredibly vivid allegory of the cave.
Classic.
We're probably all familiar with it. Those prisoners chained in a cave, seeing only shadows dancing on the wall.
And believing those shadows are the sum total of reality.
Exactly. That ancient imagery, this idea of hidden reality beyond our immediate perceived world, it resonates so strongly with the modern concept of a projected artificial universe, doesn't it?
It really does. It's like an ancient Greek premonition almost of a simulated experience.
It's fascinating.
And what's truly remarkable is how these ancient minds, without the language of code or computation, were grappling with the same fundamental question. What if our perceived reality is just a sophisticated interface?
An interface to something else.
Exactly, something far more fundamental. They were, in a sense, the earliest system architects, kind of imagining potential vulnerabilities in our sensory operating system.
That's a great way to put it.
And this philosophical thread, it continued, right into the 17th century with René Descartes. His radical doubt, famously captured in his evil demon thought experiment back in 1641.
Right, the idea that something could be deceiving him about
Precisely. He took Plato's concept of deception and really internalized it. Descartes envisioned this powerful, malevolent deceiver, like a kind of super hacker, manipulating all his perceptions, making everything he thought he knew an illusion. He questioned absolutely everything, his senses, the external world, even mathematical truths. He was trying to find just one thing that could not possibly be doubted.
And that really parallels the idea of some hyper-advanced program feeding us perfectly crafted illusions, doesn't it? Making us believe in a world that isn't fundamentally physical.
It's a direct parallel. And building on that thread, moving into the 18th century, we encountered George Berkeley, his idealism around 1710.
Okay, Berkeley. His ideas were even more out there.
Well, he took an even more radical stance, essentially arguing that to be is to be perceived, esse est percipi.
Right. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's around.
Exactly, that problem. He posited that physical reality doesn't exist independently of our minds. Instead, what we call physical reality consists solely of perceptions and ideas sustained by a greater mind.
Which for him was God.
For Berkeley, yes, it was the mind of God. There's no underlying matter, only mind. So the existence of that tree falling, its sound, it's sustained because God perceives it.
It's not hard to draw a direct parallel there, again, to our modern discussions of a simulated world, sustained not by physics maybe, but by a computational mind or some overarching system.
A kind of digital consciousness or a cosmic supercomputer, yeah, the parallel is striking.
So when we look at these pre-modern ideas collectively, Plato, Descartes, Berkeley, they really laid the groundwork, didn't they?
They absolutely did. They established the philosophical foundation. They relentlessly questioned the nature of appearance versus reality, suggesting the world of our senses might be an illusion or a projection or just a construct.
Whether it's shadows or a demon or God's mind.
Exactly. Whatever the mechanism, these thinkers primed humanity to accept the possibility that our everyday experience might not be the fundamental truth. They kind of normalized the idea that what we perceive might not be the ultimate reality.
Setting the stage for something like the simulation hypothesis.
Precisely. They set the stage for these more complex, technologically driven thought experiments.
Okay, so it's one thing for philosophers to ponder these abstract concepts, but the debate largely stayed in that, well, philosophical realm for centuries. Then you mentioned 2003, Nick Bostrom. That seems to be a real turning point.
It really was. Everything shifted then. Philosopher Nick Bostrom publishes this incredibly influential paper, Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?
Yeah.
And crucially, he reframed this ancient question probabilistically.
Right, he put numbers on it in a way.
He gave it a quantifiable, logical structure that kind of demanded a more concrete answer, moving it beyond just abstract pondering.
Okay, so let's unpack Bostrom's argument. It's called the probabilistic trilemma, right?
That's right. And it's a cornerstone of the modern simulation hypothesis. It's quite ingenious because, look, it doesn't actually assert that we are in a simulation.
Okay.
Instead, it argues that at least one of three specific propositions must be true. And the implications of this are pretty profound.
All right, let's hear the three propositions.
Okay. First, proposition 1. Almost no civilization reaches a post-human technological stage capable of running ancestor simulations.
Post-human. What exactly does that mean here? Super advanced.
Yeah, think of a stage where intelligent life has advanced far, far beyond our current human capabilities, biologically, technologically, you name it. Imagine a civilization with, like, virtually unlimited computational power and resources.
Able to simulate entire universes, basically.
Or at least incredibly detailed, high-fidelity simulations of their own history, their ancestors, hence ancestor simulations, complete with conscious beings inside them. So Bostrom suggests if almost no civilization ever gets to this point, maybe they destroy themselves or hit some insurmountable barrier or just lose interest.
Then simulations would be super rare.
Exactly. And the chances of us being in one would be negligible. So that's one way out.
Okay, so that's exit ramp 1.
Yeah.
Advanced civilizations just don't make it that far. But what if they do develop that kind of power?
Well, that leads to proposition 2. Post-human civilizations rarely run such simulations.
So they can, but they don't. Why wouldn't they?
Good question. There could be several reasons, maybe strong ethical concerns. Is it right to create conscious beings just to run a historical experiment?
That's a heavy one.
Or maybe resource allocation priorities? They might have better things to do with all that computing power. Or perhaps they simply find such simulations uninteresting, maybe redundant. If these powerful civilizations exist but choose not to create many simulations, then again, the chances of us being in one would remain pretty low.
So that's the second possibility. They can, but they choose not to, or very rarely do. But what if they can reach that stage and they do decide to run simulations?
Well, that's where the statistical argument really starts to bite, doesn't it?
It feels like it.
Because then we arrive at proposition 3. Therefore, if such simulations are common, the overwhelming majority of beings are simulated, and it is almost certain we are among them.
Okay, break that down. Why almost certain?
This is the statistical punchline. Think about it. If even one advanced civilization reaches that post-human stage, and they decide to run even a moderate number of these ancestor simulations.
Each simulation could contain billions, trillions of conscious beings.
Exactly. Each simulation containing countless conscious beings over its simulated history. Then the total number of simulated lives would vastly, vastly outnumber the number of lives in the original base reality.
So the sheer scale tips the odds.
Immensely. The sheer potential number of simulated realities means that statistically it becomes overwhelmingly probable that we, you, me, everyone are among the simulated, not the simulators in base reality.
Wow. Okay, so this trilemma, it forces us to confront this unsettling truth. Either advanced civilizations almost never emerge, or they almost never run simulations, or we are almost certainly living inside one.
That's it. It doesn't declare we're in a simulation, but it strongly asserts that at least one of these three propositions has to be true.
And the truly mind-bending part is that if advanced civilizations can and do create these hyper-realistic simulations, well, the statistical likelihood points pretty strongly towards us not being in that original base reality.
It's a profound challenge to our intuitive sense of reality. It really is.
Which raises that crucial question you mentioned. If we are in a simulation, what does that actually mean for our lives, our experiences?
Yeah.
Does anything change?
And this is exactly where philosopher David Chalmers steps in. He extends the debate beyond just are we or aren't we. He proposes this concept he calls virtual realism.
Chalmers. Famous for his work on consciousness, the heart problem. He really takes the idea of a simulated reality and kind of flips the script on what real even means, right?
Precisely. In works like The Matrix as Metaphysics and his more recent book, Reality Plus, Chalmers argues something quite profound. He says that even if we inhabit a simulation, our world, our relationships, our experiences, they are no less real than if they were physically constructed.
How does that work?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's just code.
Think about it this way. A table is still a table, right? Whether it's ultimately made of atoms or bits of information, you can still put your coffee cup on it.
Okay.
A person is still a person with thoughts, feelings, connections, whether their brain is biological or some incredibly complex digital construct. The pain you feel when you stub your toe, that's real pain, regardless of whether the toe itself is physical or digital.
So the experience is real, regardless of the underlying substrate.
Exactly. The entities are simply digital rather than physical in their fundamental substrate, but their function, their interactions, their causal roles in our world remain the same.
That's a powerful and actually quite liberating shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It moves us away from that sort of existential dread of being fake or insignificant.
Absolutely. The significance of virtual realism is huge. It shifts the focus from this potentially disheartening idea of being fake to understanding the intrinsic nature of our reality, whatever its underlying foundation might be.
It's not just a philosophical word game.
Not at all. It's profoundly liberating because it means that whether our universe is made of quarks or code, the meaning we create, the bonds we forge, the choices we make, none of that is diminished. A simulated sunset can still fill us with awe. A simulated act of kindness still warms the heart.
So it elevates the subjective experience.
It elevates the importance of our lived reality regardless of its objective substrate. The question becomes less about whether we are real and more about what kind of real we are. It's a very empowering philosophical position, actually, when you're facing the simulation hypothesis.
Okay, so that lays down the philosophical bedrock pretty solidly. But as you said, it's not just philosophers asking these questions. It turns out that physicists, kind of independently of Bostrom, have been exploring the idea of a computational universe for decades now.
Yeah, this is where things get really fascinating, seeing how theoretical physics started converging on similar ideas. It's almost as if the universe itself was, whispering secrets about its digital nature.
Who were some of the key figures there?
Well, one of the earliest pioneers was Konrad Zuse. He was a German computer scientist, actually built the first programmable computer. As early as 1969, in his work Rechnender Raum, which means calculating space, Zuse proposed that the universe might not just contain computation, but might be a cellular automaton.
Like Conway's Game of Life, but for the whole universe.
Kind of like that, yeah. Imagine each tiny segment of space-time acting like a mini processor following simple rules. And from these countless local computations, the entire universe calculates its existence step by computational step. Space-time, all physical phenomena, literally emerging from this fundamental information processing.
That's a truly radical idea for the late 60s, just mind-blowing.
It really was. And it didn't stop there. If you move forward to 1989, you have the legendary physicist John Archibald Wheeler.
Wheeler, yeah. Famous name.
And his iconic phrase, it from bit.
It from bit. What did he mean by that?
He proposed that reality, at its very core, is informational. He suggested that physical existence itself could ultimately be reduced to a series of binary yes-no questions. Like the universe is constantly asking questions and creating reality from the answers.
The physical it particles, fields, forces.
Exactly. All of that fundamentally arises from the bit of information. Everything we perceive is literally constructed from answers to queries about existence. Is there a particle here? Yes, no. Does it have this property? Yes, no.
That resonates incredibly deeply with the digital perspective, framing existence itself as information.
It does. Then fast forward again to 2006. Seth Lloyd, a pioneer in quantum computing, took it another step further with his quantum computer universe theory.
Okay, the universe is a quantum computer.
Essentially, yes. Lloyd proposed that the universe itself functions as a giant quantum computer. In his view, all physical processes, every interaction, every change, every evolution of matter and energy are basically equivalent to computations. The universe isn't just like a computer, it is the ultimate computer, constantly calculating its own existence at the most fundamental level of quantum mechanics.
And if that wasn't mind-bending enough, Max Tegmark took it even further, didn't he?
Yeah.
With his mathematical universe hypothesis in 2014, did he basically say reality is math?
Tegmark's proposal is indeed the most radical, perhaps. He suggests that reality isn't just described by mathematics, which we all accept, but that it is mathematics.
Wow.
He argues that our physical world isn't just governed by mathematical laws, but that it literally is a mathematical structure. Now, when you connect this to the simulation perspective, it suggests that the ultimate fabric of reality could be seen as pure mathematical code, like a meticulously designed program running itself.
So everything we see, from quarks to galaxies, is just an expression of this underlying mathematical algorithm.
That's the idea. It's a profound and, for many, quite controversial hypothesis.
These theoretical insights are certainly compelling. But what really caught a lot of people's attention, I think, was the work of theoretical physicist James Gates, finding something like error-correcting codes in physics equations.
That's right. James Gates reported a really astonishing discovery. He found what appear to be error-correcting code structures embedded within the complex mathematical equations of supersymmetry.
Supersymmetry. That's the theory, trying to link different kinds of fundamental particles, right?
Exactly. It posits a deeper symmetry between the universe's fundamental particles, bosons, and fermions. Within the equations describing this symmetry, Gates found codes. And these weren't just any codes. They were strikingly similar to the checksums and error-correcting algorithms we use in digital communications.
Like the codes that make sure my email arrives okay or my computer runs properly.
Precisely those kinds of codes. They ensure data integrity. Now, it's crucial to say Gates himself is careful not to claim this proves we're in a simulation.
Okay, important caveat.
But this uncanny alignment, as some call it, is highly suggestive. It points towards a potentially code-like or informational foundation to the very laws of physics themselves. It adds significant conceptual weight to the framework for a simulated reality.
It's almost as if the universe has its own built-in debugger.
That's a great analogy, yeah, something to maintain its consistency.
So, looking back, these ancient philosophical seeds, combined with these modern ideas from digital physics, they paint a remarkably consistent picture, don't they? A potentially coded reality.
It makes the idea of a simulated reality seem not just, wild speculation, but in some ways elegantly consistent with what we're learning about the universe at a fundamental level.
But okay, if we're going to take this seriously as more than just philosophy or cool theory,
Yeah.
we need to move beyond that, right? If our reality is code, can we actually find a bug? Can we find a pixel that betrays its nature?
And this takes us directly to the central challenge, probably the biggest hurdle for the hypothesis, the problem of falsifiability.
Right. Can we prove it wrong?
Exactly. Many critics argue that the simulation hypothesis is inherently unfalsifiable, that it blurs the lines between what we consider empirical science, which needs to be testable, and pure metaphysics, which might not be.
I can definitely see why it's considered an Achilles heel. If we are in a simulation, any evidence we find, say, a weird glitch in physics, could itself just be part of the simulation's programming.
That's precisely the criticism articulated very clearly by physicists like Sabine Hossenfelder. She points out that any purported glitch or signature we might detect could simply be another meticulously simulated artifact.
So how do you definitively prove you're in a simulation if the simulator can perfectly account for or even design all possible evidence? It feels like a frustratingly circular argument.
It does. It makes definitive proof or disproof incredibly difficult, maybe even impossible in principle. And that pushes the hypothesis into a realm closer to metaphysics, an untestable belief system, rather than an empirical scientific hypothesis that you can support or refute with observation and experiment.
Okay, so that's a major challenge. Despite that, though, some scientists haven't given up. They propose some incredibly concrete and ingenious ways to look for these glitches, these potential signatures of a computational reality.
It's true. It's like trying to find the individual pixels on a giant cosmic screen.
So what are some of these proposed tests?
Well, one notable proposal came from Silas Bean, Zora Davuti, and Martin Savage back in 2012. They focused on looking for lattice simulation signatures.
Lattice. Like a grid.
Exactly. Their idea was this. If our universe is simulated on a discrete grid like pixels on a digital screen, rather than perfectly smooth, continuous spacetime, then there might be subtle, detectable effects.
Okay, how would we detect that?
Specifically, they suggested looking at ultra-high energy cosmic rays. These are particles traveling at incredible speeds, almost the speed of light. As they zip across this hypothetical cosmic grid, they might reveal tiny anisotropies.
Anisotropies.
Directional dependencies, like maybe they travel slightly differently depending on their angle relative to the grid axis. Imagine a video game where moving diagonally is slightly jagged compared to moving straight along the pixel lines. It betrays the underlying grid.
So these cosmic rays would be like tiny fundamental probes literally hitting the edges of the cosmic pixels, so to speak.
That's a good way to think about it, yeah. The method provides a tangible, testable hypothesis, which is great for science.
Did they find anything?
Well, the result is crucial. No such evidence has been observed to date. As far as we can tell from the cosmic ray data we have, the universe appears to be smoothly continuous, at least down to the scales we can probe. It doesn't show those telltale signs of a computational grid.
Okay, so strike one for finding the pixels. What about Fermilab's holometer? That was trying something similar, right? Searching for holographic noise.
Yes, the holometer experiment was another fascinating attempt. The concept there comes from the idea of a holographic universe.
The idea that our 3D reality is projected from a 2D surface?
Sort of, yeah. That our 3D spacetime might actually be a projection from a much simpler 2D information layer, much like a hologram projects a 3D image from a 2D film. If that were the case, we might be able to detect tiny Planck-scale holographic noise, or jitter.
Like a fundamental fuzziness or pixelation in spacetime itself. Like static on an old TV.
A bit like that, yes. A fundamental jitteriness at the smallest possible scale. Fermilab's holometer was specifically designed as an incredibly sensitive interferometer to search for precisely these minute distortions in spacetime.
And what did they find? Any cosmic static?
The results were, again, quite clear. They found no evidence of holographic jitter. The experiment yielded negative results. Once more, suggesting that our reality, at the incredibly small scales they measured, appears continuous and smooth, not like a pixelated projection.
It seems like the universe, if it is a simulation, is doing a remarkably good job of hiding its code.
Or it's just not a simulation run on the kind of hardware that would produce those specific artifacts.
Fair enough. But there's another intriguing idea, based on how video games work, right? Called delayed choice rendering.
Yeah, that's a clever analogy proposed by Tom Campbell and Huma Nawadi. Their hypothesis goes like this. If our universe is a simulation, the simulators might try to conserve computational resources.
Makes sense. Simulating everything all the time would be wasteful.
Exactly. So maybe they only fully render phenomena when they are actually observed. Much like a video game engine doesn't bother rendering objects that are behind the player or out of their line of sight. Why render the entire universe at full quantum fidelity all the time if only a tiny fraction of it is being observed by conscious agents?
So reality might be a bit lazy, computationally speaking. It only solidifies when we actually look at it. That sounds suspiciously like quantum mechanics.
It does tread close to interpretations of quantum mechanics, yeah.
Yeah.
And they propose testing this using quantum delayed choice experiments.
How would those work?
Well, these experiments are already designed to explore how observation affects quantum states, basically. How tiny particles seem to decide their properties only when we measure them in ways that really defy our classical intuition. In a simulated reality using lazy rendering, such experiments might, in theory, reveal signs of this. Situations where the universe only makes up its mind, so to speak, when the observation is actually made, rather than having a predetermined state.
Okay, and the results of those experiments.
Well, currently, the results from these sophisticated quantum experiments continue to conform beautifully with standard quantum mechanics. They don't offer any clear support for the idea of delayed rendering as a sign of a resource-constrained simulation. Quantum mechanics remains weird, but consistently weird.
Consistently weird. I like that. And then just quickly, there's Bostrom's more fanciful suggestion about like embedded messages.
Yeah, he half joked about that. The idea that maybe the simulators might leave intentional signals for us to find, like a made by Zorp sign hidden in the cosmic microwave background, or a literal pop-up message in reality.
Hello world, floating in the air.
Exactly. While it's certainly fanciful, maybe even a bit silly, it does highlight our reliance on speculation when direct physical evidence remains so elusive. It underscores the fact that without concrete, verifiable physical evidence, we're kind of left guessing about the intentions or methods of any potential simulators.
So, summing up these tests, We've got lattice signatures, holographic noise, delayed rendering, all these ingenious empirical proposals.
Yeah.
But the upshot seems to be null results.
Pretty much. While scientists have devised these clever ways to try and poke holes in the fabric of reality, searching for signs of its digital nature, the empirical evidence for the simulation hypothesis has, so far, consistently yielded null results.
It really reinforces just how difficult it is to prove or disprove such a profound idea. It makes you wonder, like I said, are we just not looking hard enough or in the right way? Or is the simulation simply too good or just not there?
Exactly. These null results don't necessarily disprove the simulation hypothesis outright. Maybe the simulation operates on principles we haven't conceived of, or the resolution is far higher than we can currently probe, but they certainly don't provide the concrete evidence some proponents might have hoped for. They push the burden of proof back onto those who suggest we are simulated. The universe, in its current observable state, appears remarkably consistent and lacks the obvious glitches or pixels we might expect from, say, a low-fidelity simulation.
Okay. So, given how elusive the direct physical evidence has been, it really forces us to consider other avenues, other angles. And in today's world, one player seems to be becoming increasingly central to this entire discussion. Artificial intelligence, AI.
AI is uniquely positioned within this whole debate. It's almost like a dual agent, isn't it? It could potentially serve as both the architect of future simulations and, simultaneously, a powerful tool for investigating the hypothesis from within our own perceived reality.
That's a fascinating duality. AI as creator and detector.
Exactly. This duality makes AI a central, almost existential character in the simulation narrative.
Okay, let's start with AI as architect. The idea here is that the simulators, the beings running our potential simulation, might not even be biological post-humans, but the very artificial intelligences we ourselves are striving to create.
That's the core argument, yeah. If advanced AI surpasses human intelligence, achieving what people call superintelligence or the singularity, and it gains access to vast, maybe even unimaginable computational resources,
Then it could construct ancestor simulations.
why not? Think about it. If an AI can master complex physics, economics, sociology, biology, maybe even consciousness itself, and it has the processing power to run entire universes, why wouldn't it? Or perhaps why wouldn't some AIs choose to do so?
Elon Musk has pushed this idea hard, right?
He has, yeah. Elon Musk, probably the most prominent public advocate of the simulation hypothesis, has famously argued this point. He claims future civilizations, and crucially, he often implies these might be run by AIs, will inevitably create realities indistinguishable from our own.
And he bases his 1 in billions chance that we're not in a simulation largely on video game progress.
Pretty much. On the rapid improvements we've seen in gaming technology, the graphical fidelity, the complexity, he extrapolates that trend forward. Now, critics, of course, note this is primarily intuition and extrapolation, not hard evidence or rigorous proof.
Fair enough. But the implication is startling.
Mm.
Our creators might not be biological beings who evolved eons before us, but rather advanced synthetic intelligences that we might be on the cusp of creating ourselves.
It's a truly recursive, almost dizzying thought.
Okay, but AI isn't just a potential simulator. It could also be a kind of digital detective.
Yeah.
A tool for investigating the hypothesis.
Precisely. This is where AI's role shifts to being a glitch hunter. Modern AI, especially machine learning, excels at anomaly detection. It's brilliant at spotting patterns and deviations in massive data sets that are far too subtle or too numerous for human analysis.
So if our reality is a simulation, maybe it has some computational constraints or shortcuts, leading to tiny, subtle deviations from perfectly smooth physics. And AI could find those.
That's the hope. An AI could sift through mountains of data from astrophysical observations, particle physics experiments, maybe even genetic data looking for the equivalent of a pixelated edge, or a rounding error, or some statistical anomaly that we just can't see with our own eyes or current methods.
Like applying AI to the cosmic ray data we talked about earlier, looking for those lattice signatures, but doing it much better than we can.
Exactly. Far more efficiently, far more comprehensively, potentially identifying subtle correlations or anomalies that completely escape our notice. It could be our best bet for finding empirical evidence, if any exists.
And beyond just finding glitches, AI is also incredibly good at discerning underlying patterns and rules. Could it help us find the universe's operating manual, so to speak, the source code?
Yes, potentially. That's the role of AI as a law finder. AI has already demonstrated a remarkable capacity to rediscover fundamental physical laws just from raw observational data. There are projects like AI Feynman, for instance, that have shown AI systems deriving complex scientific formulas purely from data without prior physics knowledge.
Wow.
So, if reality is indeed underpinned by compact algorithms or some fundamental code, as digital physics theories suggest, then AI might be uniquely positioned to reveal this structure. It could potentially uncover the universe's core algorithms more efficiently and maybe even more insightfully than human scientists can. It might offer a more direct route to understanding the computational basis of our reality, if there is one.
It really feels like we're already dipping our toes into this AI as simulator future, even right now.
We absolutely are. Just look at the current advancements in AI-driven environments, particularly in gaming, but also in scientific research simulations. These systems already simulate autonomous agents interacting within complex, dynamic virtual worlds.
They're getting incredibly realistic.
They are. And as computing power continues its relentless exponential increase, Moore's law or whatever comes next, these simulations will become ever richer, more realistic, capable of hosting increasingly sophisticated intelligent agents, maybe even rudimentary consciousness eventually. This ongoing development really reinforces the plausibility of Bostrom's trilemma.
Because we're literally building the tools that could make it happen.
We are literally building the foundations for what future post-human civilizations or advanced AIs could achieve on a vastly greater scale. We are creating the very conditions that make the simulation hypothesis seem more compelling, more technologically feasible year by year.
And finally, AI isn't just a technological factor here. It's also influencing how we think about and perceive the simulation hypothesis culturally, isn't it?
That's a really important point. AI serves as a powerful cultural amplifier. The rapid advancements in AI generating narratives, creating deepfakes, powering immersive simulations and entertainment, performing sophisticated data analyses, all of this amplifies our cultural fascination with the simulation hypothesis. And
It makes it feel less like sci-fi.
exactly. It moves the idea beyond niche academic circles, embedding it deeper into the popular imagination, into philosophical reflection, even into our everyday conversations. As AI creates more convincing virtual worlds, that boundary between real and simulated becomes ever blurrier in our collective consciousness, making the hypothesis feel more immediate and plausible to a much broader audience.
Okay, so the rise of AI definitely seems to strengthen the plausibility argument for the simulation hypothesis, or at least keeps it relevant. But it's absolutely crucial to circle back and consider the powerful critiques, the objections that keep this debate so vibrant. It's definitely not a one-sided conversation.
Not at all. The skeptic's corner is vital, and it raises some really tough questions, starting with perhaps the most prominent criticism we already touched on, the problem of unfalsifiability.
Right, this one really bothers me from a scientific perspective. It feels like a logical trap. If we find what looks like a glitch or some subtle signature, the proponent of the simulation hypothesis can always just counter, well, the glitch itself is a designed feature of the simulation.
Or the simulators anticipated you looking for glitches, so they programmed that evidence in.
Exactly. So how do you ever detect a flaw if the flaw itself could be part of the simulation's intended behavior, or even a test?
You've hit on the core of the criticism, the Achilles heel, as articulated by Sabine Hossenfelder and others. It makes it potentially impossible to definitively prove or disprove. It fundamentally pushes the hypothesis closer to metaphysics, like an untestable belief system, rather than an empirical scientific hypothesis that can be rigorously tested, supported, or refuted by observation and experiment. If the simulator is truly omnipotent within its creation, any anomaly can just be explained away, leaving us kind of stuck in an epistemic cul-de-sac.
And then there's the incredibly practical challenge we also touched on. What about the sheer computing power required? To run a universe like ours with quantum mechanics and everything.
This is the objection of resource constraints, and it's a big one. Simulating an entire quantum universe with full fidelity down to every single subatomic particle interaction, every quantum fluctuation, every conscious mind contemplating its own existence would seem to demand an inconceivable amount of computing power. Maybe infinite, maybe just hyper-astronomical.
Even for a super advanced post-human civilization.
Even for them, the scale of this computation is truly mind-bogglingly vast. And this presents a dilemma for the hypothesis. If the simulators don't use shortcuts and simulate absolutely everything perfectly, well, the required computation might be literally beyond anything possible, even in principle. But
if they do use shortcuts to save resources, like only rendering what's observed or using lower resolution at certain scales.
Exactly. If they use those kinds of computational tricks, then logically there should be detectable artifacts or glitches. Yet, as we discussed with the empirical tests, the lattice searches, the holometer, these specific kinds of artifacts haven't been found.
So either it takes practically infinite power, which seems unlikely, or there should be evidence of the power-saving measures, and we haven't found that evidence either. That's a pretty strong point for the skeptics.
It's a very powerful challenge from a computational feasibility perspective.
Okay, and what about Bostrom's core argument itself, his probabilistic trilemma? Is that completely watertight, or do critics challenge the probabilities?
Oh, it's definitely challenged. Bostrom's probabilistic reasoning is fiercely contested on several grounds.
Like what?
Firstly, some critics argue that the likelihood of advanced civilizations wanting to run numerous ancestor simulations might be vastly overestimated. We talked about ethics earlier. Maybe strong ethical prohibitions emerge. Or maybe resource allocation priorities always favor something else, exploring the real universe, say. Or perhaps, honestly, post-human civilizations just find simulating their ancestors boring or redundant.
So if the motivation isn't there, then Proposition 2, that they rarely run simulations, becomes much more likely, collapsing the probability of us being in one.
Precisely. The argument hinges heavily on assumptions about post-human motivations, which are inherently speculative. Secondly, others bring up the weirdness of nested simulations.
Simulations within simulations, like Inception.
Kind of, yeah. If every simulation can potentially create more simulations inside itself, then the whole definition of base reality becomes incredibly recursive and complex. Does that infinite regress change the probabilities? Does it even make sense? It's a deep philosophical rabbit hole, but it shows that the probabilistic framework itself isn't universally accepted as straightforward.
That adds another layer of mind-bending complexity. Okay, finally, let's touch on a more sociological critique. The idea of cultural bias. Is this whole hypothesis just a reflection of our times?
This critique suggests exactly that the simulation hypothesis, while incredibly compelling today, might simply reflect the prevailing technological metaphors of our era.
How so?
Well, think back. In previous centuries, when clockwork mechanisms were the peak of sophisticated technology, thinkers like Isaac Newton often imagined the universe as a grand, intricate clockwork mechanism operating with perfect, God-given precision.
Right, the clockwork universe.
Today, we live in the computer age. We're immersed in digital technologies, virtual realities, algorithms. So it feels natural, almost intuitive, for us to conceive of the universe as a giant digital computer program or a simulation. This critique suggests our current understanding, the very way we frame these big questions, might be more a product of our specific technological environment and cultural zeitgeist, rather than some objective, timeless truth about the universe itself.
So we're basically seeing computers everywhere, because computers are what we build and understand best right now.
It's a possibility. It's like we're holding a hammer, so everything looks like a nail. It's a useful check on our thinking. Are we discovering something fundamental, or just projecting our own technological moment onto the cosmos?
That's a really grounding perspective. Okay, so while the scientific and philosophical arguments rage on, the simulation hypothesis also raises these incredibly profound questions about our place in the universe, our beliefs, the very meaning of existence. If we are in a simulation, does anything truly matter anymore?
This is where the debate really moves into its most profound and, frankly, personal dimensions. If we accept, even hypothetically, that we live in a simulation, the question of religion and meaning takes on a completely new form. The traditional concept of a divine creator, a god,
Gets replaced by a programmer or an AI.
it could be reframed that way, yes.
Yeah.
Our creator might be a programmer or an advanced AI, or maybe even a team of researchers in a higher level reality running an experiment.
Does it diminish the idea of God, or does it just change the definition, maybe make it more relatable for some people in a tech age?
It definitely reframes it, but it doesn't necessarily resolve the traditional theological questions. You still have to ask, is a simulator godlike in its power to create and sustain our world? Does their intention for creating the simulation, was it research, entertainment, an accident? Does that intention matter for our understanding of purpose, morality, or the nature of faith?
Right. Is a bored teenager running a simulation the same as a benevolent creator?
Exactly. For some, it might secularize the whole idea of creation. For others, it might just shift the locus of divinity to a higher plane of existence, the simulator's reality. The core questions about purpose, consciousness, transcendence, they likely still remain, just within a potentially new cosmological framework.
And speaking of profound implications, there's that fascinating, almost sci-fi idea related to immortality and resurrection you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, this one is really startling. The idea is, if our consciousness, our memories, our entire reality are ultimately just software, just information patterns.
Then maybe they can be copied,
Yeah.
backed up, rebooted.
In principle, yes. If your consciousness is merely a complex pattern of information, then that pattern could theoretically be stored, restored after death, maybe even reinstantiated in a different simulated environment. James Gates, the physicist who found the error codes, has noted this explicitly. It offers a kind of secular analog of eternal life or resurrection.
Wow.
It transforms these abstract spiritual concepts into potentially achievable technological feats, where life after death could become a matter of data management and sufficient computing power rather than divine intervention.
That's quite a thought, taking something so ancient and spiritual and giving it this completely modern technological spin. And speaking of modern figures, we have to come back to Elon Musk because he's played such a huge role in popularizing this hypothesis recently.
He absolutely has. He's been a very vocal proponent, probably the most famous one, famously claiming there's only a 1 in billions chance that we are not in a simulation.
And his main reasoning, again, is just the speed of video game improvement.
Primarily, yes. His argument hinges on extrapolating from our current ability to create increasingly immersive, realistic virtual worlds. He reasons that any sufficiently advanced civilization would inevitably reach a point where they can create simulations so realistic they're indistinguishable from base reality. And since there would be many simulations for each base reality, well, the odds are we're in one of the simulations.
But his claims aren't exactly met with universal scientific applause, are they?
No, definitely not. Critics, including many scientists and philosophers, frequently point out that while Musk's intuition is certainly compelling and has done wonders for sparking public interest,
Which is valuable in itself.
absolutely, but his claim is fundamentally based on extrapolation and an intuitive sense of technological progress, not on concrete empirical evidence or rigorous scientific proof. It's a powerful thought experiment, a provocative argument, but it lacks the testable predictions and falsifiability that science typically requires.
Okay, so we've explored the arguments for, the arguments against, the science, the philosophy, the implications, but ultimately let's bring it back to the listener, to us. If we were to seriously entertain this idea, even just as a possibility that we live in a simulated world, how should we approach our lives? Would you still worry about traffic? How do we find meaning in a potentially digital existence?
This is perhaps the most critical question, isn't it? And David Chalmers, again, offers a really profound perspective here. He reinforces that even if simulated, our lives remain profoundly meaningful.
Because the experience is real to us.
Exactly. Our experiences, the joy of connection, the pain of loss, the beauty of art, the pursuit of knowledge, are genuine within the context of our reality. The digital substrate, if it exists, doesn't make the emotions or the relationships any less real to us. A simulated love is still love. A simulated achievement is still an achievement worth celebrating. Our reality is the one we inhabit, and its meaning is fundamentally ours to forge within it.
And I remember Max Tegmark, the mathematical universe guy, had a particularly memorable and kind of humorous piece of advice for living with a hypothesis.
He did. Tegmark famously quipped that the best practical advice for someone considering the simulation hypothesis is simply to do interesting things so the simulators don't shut you down.
Huh, I like that.
It's lighthearted, but there's a profoundly insightful call to action underneath it, right? It encourages engagement, curiosity, creativity, learning, pushing boundaries, regardless of our cosmic substrate. If we are in a simulation, perhaps the best way to ensure its continuation, or at least to make our run worthwhile, is to be as interesting, as dynamic, and as meaningful as possible within the parameters we're given.
It's actually a really empowering message.
Yeah.
Our lives hold value and purpose, irrespective of their ultimate origin story. Live interestingly.
Precisely.
So what does the future hold for this intriguing, unsettling, and, in a way, ultimately inspiring idea? Where do we go from here with the simulation hypothesis? What's next?
Well, the journey definitely continues, and probably on multiple fronts simultaneously. In physics, for example, we can expect continued refinement in physics.
Meaning better experiments.
Exactly. Ongoing, ever more sensitive cosmic ray observations, more advanced interferometric experiments like upgraded versions of the holometer, searching for those lattice signatures or holographic noise with greater precision. These experiments will continue to tighten the bounds on these specific models of a computational universe.
So they'll either find something or rule those specific models out more strongly.
Right. They'll either push the hypothesis further into the realm of pure speculation if no evidence is found at higher sensitivities, or, more thrillingly, they might eventually reveal some subtle, long-sought evidence that could finally point towards a computational substratum. The search isn't over.
And it seems unavoidable that AI will be a huge driver of future developments here.
Absolutely unavoidable. AI's expanding capabilities are crucial. As AI technology continues its rapid advance, its ability to detect those subtle anomalies in vast datasets will become even more sophisticated. Its capacity to model fundamental physical laws directly from observational data will improve. And of course, its power to simulate increasingly complex and realistic worlds will grow exponentially.
Making it central to both sides of the equation.
Exactly. AI becomes an even more central player in both the potential construction of future simulations and the investigation and potential detection of signatures within our own reality. It sharpens both horns of the dilemma.
And what about on the philosophical side? Will Chalmers' virtual realism become more sort of accepted or mainstream?
I think that's very likely, yes. The philosophical evolution will probably see virtual realism or similar ideas gain further traction. This will fundamentally shift the philosophical question away from a simple, maybe unproductive binary of are we real or not real?
Towards something more nuanced.
Towards a more nuanced and, I think, more productive question. Okay, what kind of real are we? This shift prompts deeper exploration into the nature of consciousness, identity, value, and existence within any substrate, whether it turns out to be biological, digital, or something else entirely we haven't conceived of yet. It moves us past the initial shock to a more profound understanding of what it means to be.
And finally, just culturally, it feels like this hypothesis isn't going anywhere, does it? It seems to have captured the imagination.
It absolutely does. The cultural endurance of the simulation hypothesis seems assured. It taps into something deep. It will remain a powerful metaphor in our culture, in films, books, games, everyday conversation, for questioning reality, for exploring concepts of free will versus determinism in a potentially programmed world, and for grappling with the ultimate meaning of our existence in an increasingly technological and, well, virtualized world.
It speaks to our anxieties and our hopes.
It really does. It touches on primal human curiosity and our deepest anxieties and hopes about what might lie beyond our immediate perception. It's just too compelling an idea to fade away.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a vast amount of ground in this deep dive, seriously. From Plato's ancient cave all the way to Bostrom's modern trilemma.
From the digital physics of visionaries like Wheeler, Zuse, and Gates,
to the, well, currently null results of those fascinating empirical tests trying to find the glitches.
And grappling with the huge implications and the double-edged sword that is artificial intelligence.
It's been a truly epic intellectual journey exploring this whole landscape.
Indeed. The simulation hypothesis really does sit at this unique crossroads, straddling philosophy, cutting-edge science, and, let's be honest, a healthy dose of speculation. It constantly pushes the boundaries of our intellectual horizons.
And the current state seems to be intriguing uncertainty.
That sums it up well. While the direct empirical tests have so far yielded null results, the conceptual framework it provides is incredibly powerful. It forces us to confront these truly deep questions about the very nature of reality, the essence of consciousness, and the ultimate trajectory of our technology. And AI, as we've seen, just intensifies this whole debate, providing both near methods of inquiry and, potentially, a plausible candidate for the role of simulator itself.
So it really feels like whether or not we actually live in a simulation might very well remain undecidable, at least for the foreseeable future. A truly profound and maybe permanent mystery.
It might be, and this is the crucial takeaway for me, echoing Chalmers, even if we are simulated, our experiences, our choices, our pursuit of knowledge, our quest for meaning, our love, our loss, all of it remains intensely genuine and profoundly valuable within our reality.
The how doesn't diminish the what.
Beautifully put. The how of our existence, the substrate, doesn't diminish the what of our lives. Our reality and all its amazing complexity, its beauty, its suffering, its challenge, is the one we inhabit. And its meaning is fundamentally ours to forge right here, right now.
So maybe a final thought to leave our listeners with. If our universe is a simulation, Could the true measure of our existence be not just what we discover within its rules, but how we choose to live within its parameters? What kind of story we decide to create within the game?
And perhaps, just perhaps, the ultimate test for any advanced civilization isn't really whether they can create a simulation, but whether the conscious beings within that simulation can achieve the wisdom to truly comprehend and define their own reality, regardless of its origin. And maybe even, like us today, have the audacity to question the very nature of their own existence.